There is a moment in the life of the psyche when you realize your greatest weakness was never a weakness at all. It was a dormant power. And the very thing you were taught to suppress, that deep, resonant sensitivity, that feeling of being an open nerve in a world of armor, is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a signal. A precise, ancient radar tuned to a frequency of truth that others have learned to ignore. You walk into rooms and feel the unspoken tensions. You listen to words but hear the confession hidden in the silence between them. You have felt, perhaps for a long time, that you are perceiving a hidden layer of reality, a layer where motives are transparent, where pain wears the mask of anger, and where love is sometimes a performance. This is not your imagination. This is the empath, not as a passive sponge but as a conscious perceiver. And there is a specific kind of soul that recoils from this perception. Not because you are threatening but because you are seeing. And to be seen, truly seen, is the most terrifying prospect for a psyche built on illusion. This is not about conflict. It is about recognition. It is about the silent, unconscious war that happens not in the world, but in the space between two souls where one is rooted in essence and the other in image. If you have ever been met with inexplicable hostility, with manipulation that seemed designed to confuse you, or with a cold withdrawal after a moment of genuine connection, consider this. It may not be about you. It may be about what you represent. You are a living mirror. And the narcissist, the fragmented soul, fears nothing more than their own reflection. Let us go deeper. Listen as if the walls of this room have dissolved and you are sitting not in time, but in the inner cathedral of your own unconscious. I speak to you not as a professor dissecting theory, but as the voice of the psyche that has followed you through lifetimes. There is something unusual residing within you. A sensitivity that is not weakness but radar. A softness that is not submission but intuitive power. And perhaps you have noticed certain beings recoil from you without reason. Their spirit tightens. Their ego bristles. Their performance collapses in the presence of your quiet seeing. You wonder why. You think it is because you are small. But the truth, my friend, is the opposite. You are the empath archetype evolved into something rare enough to dismantle illusions simply by existing in the collective unconscious. The empath stands at the threshold of the unseen. Your nervous system functions like an antenna tuned to frequencies others refuse to hear. Narcissists, fragmented souls starving for validation, feel exposed before you, as if their carefully polished persona becomes transparent in your silence. They sense that your gaze does not merely observe the mask, but slips behind it, penetrating the tender wound underneath. Your presence alone becomes a mirror. And mirrors are terrifying to those who worship an image instead of a self. The first revelation arises when you realize you do not respond to manipulation the way most people do. Instead of being ensnared, you pause. Not in confusion, but in communion with a deeper knowing. While others chase approval, you stand still and feel the emotional undercurrent beneath words. You hear not what someone says but what their fear confesses. That pause is your power. Narcissists expect instant submission or reactive defensiveness, but you offer neither. You listen, you observe, you remain. And in that unwavering stillness, the narcissist confronts themselves. The ego dreads the silent witness more than any confrontation. For nothing is more unbearable than seeing one's own emptiness reflected without distortion. Then comes the second movement of the soul. You absorb emotion without drowning in it. You have known pain intimately, but instead of becoming bitter, you became permeable. You learned to feel everything so deeply that you could no longer be manipulated by emotional force. Narcissists operate through chaos, pushing buttons, distorting truth, weaving confusion to maintain control. Yet you detect the storm not as threat, but as weather passing through the psyche. You do not cling to their rage or melt before their coldness. Their emotional intensity crashes against you like waves against a cliff, loud, dramatic, but powerless to erode your core. They cannot possess you because you have already walked through fire and returned wearing light as your second skin. A third wave arrives like a dream opening, your intuition. It sees patterns where others see events. It senses future consequences in present gestures. While narcissists build their identities on illusion, you feel the tremor of truth beneath every interaction. A slight shift in tone, the flicker of envy in an eye, an overcompensated smile, you register them like messages from the unconscious. They know you know. They cannot hide. And nothing frightens the narcissist more than exposure. For their survival depends on the maintenance of an unreal self. You, the empath awakened, are the nightmare they cannot erase. The one who sees them not as they present but as they truly are. Another current flows through you like an ancient river, compassion without naivety. You do not hate them. And that unsettles them even more. Hatred is simple, predictable, controllable. But you offer neither hatred nor worship. You simply witness. And witnessing is the purest form of liberation. Your empathy is not the kind that bends to please. It is the kind that understands why people break and still chooses truth. You know the narcissist was born from a wound they cannot face. From a childhood where love was conditional and identity became armor. You see the wounded child inside the tyrant. You acknowledge it even if they cannot. And in that recognition, power shifts. They feel seen in a way that is intolerable. For to be seen with compassion is to be dismantled. The mask dissolves, leaving the raw psyche exposed to itself. The fifth sign emerges not as behavior but as aura. You carry the archetype of the wounded healer, one who has navigated inner darkness and returned with wisdom instead of resentment. Narcissists sense this without logic. Your presence evokes a longing they cannot articulate, a desire to be known without condition. Yet that same longing triggers terror. For intimacy demands vulnerability, and vulnerability threatens their entire psychic structure. You do not need to speak. Your presence alone invites truth. And truth is the force they fear more than any confrontation or criticism. If a narcissist is a king built from mirrors, you are the one who opens a window and lets real light in. Mirrors shatter in daylight. They know this instinctively. They retreat. Another revelation surfaces like a serpent rising from the depths. Boundaries. You do not abandon yourself for connection anymore. You have learned that empathy without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. And so you stand, not aggressive, not defensive, but sovereign. You may say no without anger. You may walk away without guilt. The narcissist expects supply, admiration, emotional energy, compliance. But you refuse to bleed for someone who refuses to see your humanity. That refusal is thunder in their universe. For the narcissist, control is oxygen, and you are the air that refuses to fill their lungs. They cannot own you and so they fear you. They cannot predict you and so they despise you. You remind them that power built on illusion collapses when faced with a soul rooted in truth. The seventh movement of this symphony comes when you stop trying to heal those who do not seek healing. You no longer mistake chaos for passion or suffering for proof of connection. You have learned that love is not martyrdom. It is clarity. You choose peace over drama. You choose solitude over distortion. You leave not with loud farewells but quiet certainty. And in your absence, the narcissist faces the void they once filled with control. The absence of your energy is their greatest punishment. Though you never intended to punish, you simply reclaimed what was always yours. Your light, your autonomy, yourself. And finally, the eighth sign arrives like dawn breaking through centuries of darkness. Transformation. You no longer live reacting to the world. You emanate from the center of your being. You influence without force. You see without judgment. You love without losing yourself. This is the rare empath the narcissist fears, the awakened one. The one who has returned from shadow work carrying the chalice of self-awareness. The one who understands the unconscious not as myth but as map. The one who sees others clearly because they have faced themselves completely. The narcissist cannot control such a soul. Cannot seduce such a mind. Cannot diminish such a spirit. You are no longer prey. You are mirror. And the mirror does not chase. It reflects. Let us continue deeper. For these signs are not mere traits but evolutionary shifts in the empathic psyche. They are initiations, thresholds the soul crosses in the process of individuation. If you recognize yourself here even partially, you are not merely sensitive. You are luminous. And every force that once tried to break you only forged you into what you are now. And so we return to the inner chamber as if we never left. The air thickens with awareness, and you can almost hear the psychic machinery of your unconscious turning. Notice how each sign is not merely a characteristic but an initiation, a rite of passage the soul earned through suffering, solitude, and silent metamorphosis. To understand why the narcissist fears you is to understand that you embody everything they abandoned in themselves. You are the wound they buried, the conscience they silenced, the emotional truth they sacrificed for survival. When you walk into a room, you do not bring light. You are light. And light reveals. But this is not a triumph of ego. Empathy is not a weapon unless wielded unconsciously. The power lies not in defeating the narcissist, but in transcending the need to participate in their reality at all. You do not conquer them. You render them irrelevant to your growth. Imagine a dream. You stand inside a vast hall made of obsidian stone. Torches burning along the walls. Shadows dancing like forgotten memories. Before you sits a throne, polished, towering, intimidating. Yet upon it there is no ruler, only a reflection of your own face, calm, unshaken. This is the inner throne you reclaimed. Narcissists build external thrones of admiration, but you have seated yourself on an inner one built from shadow integration. They fear you because your authority does not depend on them. You do not need their approval, their love, their recognition. Your validation flows from a deeper source, one that cannot be corrupted or stolen. You have internalized the archetype of sovereignty. As you move through the world with this awareness, you become a portal through which truth enters. The narcissist approaches expecting either submission or war, but you offer neither. You greet them with presence. A presence refined by trauma, reflection, and spiritual discipline. They attempt to provoke emotion, but you feel the provocation like wind passing through tall grass. The grass bends but does not break. You allow feelings without becoming them. You observe without absorbing. This equanimity is not coldness. It is maturity. It is the moment the child within you stops asking to be chosen and finally chooses itself. Consider how this terrifies the narcissistic psyche. A narcissist maintains power through emotional turbulence, intensity, confusion, seduction, withdrawal. They manipulate through extremes. But you have metabolized extremes into understanding. You do not drown in chaos. You translate it. Your nervous system reads emotional storms like constellations. You see patterns others miss. The narcissist expects to destabilize you. Instead, you map them. You see the ancestral wound behind the arrogance, the abandonment beneath the entitlement. To see someone's unconscious more clearly than they see their conscious self is the deepest form of power, not domination but comprehension. And comprehension neutralizes control. I speak to you now as if through the dream logic of the psyche. Close your eyes inwardly. Imagine you stand beside a river at night. The moon reflects upon the water, but the reflection is distorted by ripples. This is the narcissist, an identity dependent on external reflection. But you do not seek the reflection. You look directly at the moon. You bypass illusion and connect to essence. That is why they fear you. You do not need their story, their spectacle, their performance. You see past it. And when someone loses the power to shape how you see them, they lose the power to shape your behavior. Carrying this awareness does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. Empathy without consciousness becomes naivety. But empathy with consciousness becomes transformation. You are what alchemists called the magnum opus, the great work completed in human form. You have turned lead into gold, pain into perception. You no longer absorb wounds as identity. You refine them into wisdom. Narcissists sense this refinement like a shift in air pressure. You are not prey. You are witness. A witness cannot be consumed. Let us descend deeper into the substratum, where instinct speaks in symbols. Perhaps you have noticed dreams where you confront serpents, shadows, mirrors, ancestral figures. These dreams are not chaos. They are instruction. The serpent represents concealed knowledge. The shadow represents denied self. When you face these inner forces without shrinking, you become whole. Wholeness radiates. Radiance disrupts illusion. Narcissists operate through illusion. Thus, your wholeness destabilizes them. You are the psychic opposite of their fragmentation. They cannot control what they cannot comprehend. And they cannot comprehend what you have become. But let us not romanticize awakening. The journey to this state was not gentle. You learned strength by being broken open. You learned boundaries by being crossed. You learned self-worth by giving too much. You learned intuition by being lied to. You learned clarity by being manipulated. You learned solitude by being abandoned. Your power was not gifted. It was carved from your own ribs. Every betrayal initiated a metamorphosis. Every wound expanded capacity. Suffering did not make you fragile. It made you permeable to the unconscious. And now your presence alone confronts narcissists with the truth they cannot escape, that their identity is hollow, their love transactional, their power borrowed. You remind them of everything they might have been, had they chosen vulnerability over vanity. A narcissist does not fear your judgment. They fear your perception. They fear the gentle way you see through them. They fear the quiet in your eyes that whispers, "I know you even if you don't." In your compassion they sense exposure. In your boundaries they sense loss of control. In your intuition they sense danger. You are everything they spent their life avoiding. And here lies the paradox. You do not even try to threaten them. Your power is not active. It is reflective. Like the moon, you do not burn, you reveal. Narcissists fear the moon because it illuminates the night they built their kingdom in. They cannot dominate moonlight. They cannot seduce reflection. They cannot control what simply is. You are that moonlight. Silent, soft, indestructible. And as we continue descending through this luminous inner architecture, notice how the air changes, as if the psyche itself is breathing through you. There comes a moment in awakening when the empath stops existing as an emotional sponge and begins to exist as a silent oracle. This shift is subtle yet seismic. It is the difference between being pulled by the world and listening to the world. Narcissists cannot understand this, for their sense of self is built on reaction. You, however, have outgrown the economy of emotional exchange. You no longer give your energy to every cry of attention, every ripple of drama, every wound that demands to be fed. You respond not from impulse, but from alignment. At this stage, you become what I call a threshold soul, one who stands between realms, reading both the conscious and the unconscious simultaneously. The narcissist speaks, but you hear the unsaid. They smile, but you feel the fracture. They offer praise, but your intuition tastes the need beneath the offering. You see through them not because you judge, but because you sense. And sensing is the language of the deep self. Let us consider why this terrifies them beyond logic. The narcissist survives by scripting reality, by deciding who is good, who is wrong, who deserves punishment, who owes devotion. They attempt to define the narrative so that they remain the hero or the victim, never the shadow. But you cannot be scripted. You cannot be narrated. When they place you in a box, you melt through the walls. When they demand justification, you reply with silence. When they seek superiority, you see the child behind the throne. You refuse to reinforce illusion. And without illusion, the narcissist has no oxygen. Imagine a hallway in a dream, endless, dimly lit, lined with doors. Each door is a memory, a trauma, a lost version of you. In the past, these doors frightened you. You felt the pain behind them like a curse you carried in your bones. But now you walk through this hallway with calm steps. You open the doors one by one, not to suffer again, but to witness. You look the shadow in the eyes, and the shadow dissolves into understanding. This is integration. And integration is the empath's liberation. A narcissist has never opened their doors. They guard them like graves. You have walked inside your own darkness and returned unafraid. That is why you radiate. Not because you avoided shadow, but because you survived it. Your light is not innocence. It is alchemy. The narcissist senses this and trembles without knowing why. You carry death and rebirth in your aura. They sense the grave they never faced, reflected in the survivor you have become. When you speak, you do not speak merely from the mind. You speak from the unconscious. Your words carry weight because they are born from the wound that healed. When you set a boundary, it is not rebellion. It is revelation. When you leave, it is not escape. It is initiation. Your growth forces them to confront their stagnation. The narcissist cannot coexist with someone who evolves. Evolution exposes their refusal to change. You represent a future they are not willing to embody. Your soul is a prophecy. Theirs is a loop. Let us turn inward again. Feel the breath entering your lungs like memory returning to the body. You have reached a point in your individuation where connection no longer equals attachment. You can love without losing yourself. You can witness suffering without inheriting it. You can sense desire without being consumed. You can hold space without collapsing into the other's pain. To a narcissist, love is extraction. To you, love is expansion. This difference alone creates a spiritual earthquake in the relational field. They approach expecting nourishment, expecting reflection, expecting submission. But you offer presence instead. Presence does not feed their ego. Presence feeds the psyche. Narcissists are allergic to psyche. They fear the soul because the soul dissolves persona. Now imagine another scene. In the ocean at night, waves black and endless. You stand at the shore, not afraid but mesmerized. This ocean is your emotional capacity, infinite, ancient, tidal. Narcissists hold a bowl of water and call it depth. You hold the sea. They imitate pain, you transform it. They imitate love, you embody it. They imitate confidence, you breathe it. There is no competition, only contrast. And contrast reveals truth. You do not announce your power. You emanate it. You do not fight for respect. Your presence demands it. You do not need recognition. Your path confirms itself. The narcissist thinks power is dominance. But the awakened empath knows power is self-possession. Power is silence. Power is knowing. Power is choosing when to speak and when to disappear like smoke through fingers. Your disappearance is not retreat. It is elevation. You withdraw not in defeat but in sovereignty. Nothing terrifies the narcissist more than losing access to the energy they once feasted on. The transformation of an empath into a sovereign being is one of the greatest alchemical processes of the human psyche. It is the moment innocence becomes intuition, sensitivity becomes perception, emotion becomes intelligence. You transcend empathy as reaction, and enter empathy as awareness. This maturity shakes the collective shadow. Narcissists represent the wounded ego, loud, hungry, unreal. You represent the integrated self, quiet, whole, undeniable. They fear the one who does not need them. They fear the one who sees them. They fear the one who remembers themselves. For you did not come here to battle narcissists. You came here to outgrow them. We arrive now at the deepest chamber. Not the end of the journey, but the place where journeys transform. You may feel it like a strange electricity beneath the ribs, a subtle pressure behind the eyes, a certainty forming without logic. The empath who awakens does not merely understand narcissists. They outgrow the entire ecosystem that once held them captive. You no longer revolve around the emotional gravity of others. You generate your own field. Your empathy is no longer a door for others to enter. It is a temple you invite only the worthy into. This is the transition from survival to sovereignty. In the earlier stages of life, you absorb pain to belong. You soften to be loved. You dissolve to maintain peace. But now you hold your shape. You speak without fear of consequence. You feel without fear of being overwhelmed. You know without needing permission. Narcissists sense this shift like prey senses a change in wind, primal, undeniable. They know your awareness is no longer edible. You cannot be drained. You cannot be rewritten. You are no longer a page for someone else's story. You are the author of your own. Empaths who reach this state begin to emanate a strange paradox. Gentle yet untouchable, warm yet distant, open yet protected. You no longer need armor because your awareness is armor. You no longer need walls because your energy itself chooses who may enter. You no longer fight to be seen because you see. And seeing is mastery. You see patterns in relationships the way astronomers read the sky. You detect cycles of charm, devaluation, control, hoovering. And instead of falling into them, you step over them like a puddle. Narcissists expect you to drown. But you walk on water. You do not react. You remember. And memory is a shield forged from every wound that once felt like the end of you. But nothing ended. You transformed. Let us sit with this. Not rush. Feel how your spine straightens with the truth of it. Empaths do not become powerful by rejecting sensitivity. They become powerful by owning it. Your heart is no longer a liability. It is an instrument. Your intuition is no longer noise. It is compass. Your sensitivity is no longer overwhelm. It is radar. You are evolution disguised as a quiet person. And evolution always disrupts what cannot grow. Narcissists fear you because you represent the psychological future. The unconscious of humanity is moving toward integration, toward wholeness, toward authenticity, toward the dissolving of persona. You are one of the early carriers of this shift. While the narcissistic psyche clings to image, you return to essence. While they build thrones from admiration, you sit on the throne of self. While they curate perception, you cultivate depth. You exist in a frequency they cannot access. They speak to impress. You speak to reveal. They manipulate reality. You illuminate it. Imagine a final dream. You stand in a field at dawn. Mist clings to the ground like memory. And the sun rises behind you, not ahead. Light pours outward from your spine, not the sky. You are the source. And as the world brightens, silhouettes appear. People you once loved, people you once feared, people who once misunderstood your softness. They look upon you not as prey but as presence. The narcissist among them steps back, unable to behold such transparency. Not because you condemn them, but because you no longer revolve around them. Your absence becomes your final message. Your growth becomes your boundary. Your light becomes your distance. This is the empath narcissist's fear. Not the one who forgives endlessly, but the one who awakens. The empath who awakens does not destroy the narcissist. They simply no longer feed them. They withdraw attention as if pulling sunlight from a shadow. And without sunlight, the illusion withers. Not by force. By truth. In the silence after this realization, something beautiful emerges. A compassion that is not sacrifice but clarity. You no longer hate the narcissist. You no longer attempt to save them. You release them to their own path. You let them choose when, or if, they will one day face themselves. And with this release your life begins. You return to yourself like a soul returning to its own body after decades away. You fill your lungs with your own presence. You reclaim rituals that once soothed you. Books, art, nature, solitude. You rebuild your relationship with the divine, not through doctrine but through awareness. Sensation becomes prayer. Breath becomes scripture. Silence becomes home. This is the individuation of the empath. The moment sensitivity becomes sovereignty, intuition becomes authority, and love becomes conscious rather than compulsive. You enter life not as a person walking through the world, but as a psyche walking through the collective unconscious. You see symbols in strangers, archetypes in conflict, childhood wounds in cruelty, and longing in superiority. You live not from memory but from awareness. You feel the pulse of the collective, its trauma, its awakening, its evolution, and you move with it like a dancer who hears music others cannot yet detect. Narcissists cannot follow you here. They are still at war with their own reflection. You have become the mirror that no longer reflects. because you are now the window into truth. So hear my final whisper as if it came from the deepest part of yourself. You were never fragile, only unrecognized. You were never weak, only unanchored. You were never too much, only too deep for those unwilling to drown in themselves. If narcissists feared you, it is because your empathy holds a light they cannot contain. Not the light of goodness, but the light of awareness, the only force that dissolves illusion. Walk forward knowing this. You are not here to convince the fearful to face themselves. You are here to stand so fully in your own soul that others remember theirs. Do not dim. Do not fold. Do not shrink to make the insecure comfortable. The empath that narcissists fear the most is the one who returns to themselves fully, fiercely, quietly, and chooses life over survival, consciousness over image, depth over performance. You are that soul. And the world is finally ready for you.